The night the sun disappeared, the world thought it was an eclipse. But Kael Draven knew better. He stood on the rooftop of a crumbling tower in the heart of Noctera watching the sky. The clouds were not moving. The darkness was too thick, too heavy. It felt alive. Below him, the city was screaming. Car alarms echoed through the streets. People ran in panic. Shadows moved in places where shadows should not exist. Then Kael saw them. Figures stepped out of the darkness between buildings. Pale faces. Burning eyes. Smiles that showed far too many sharp teeth. Vampires. Hundreds of them. They moved through the streets like a silent army, calm and patient, as if they had been waiting for this moment for centuries. Kael tightened his grip on the silver blade in his hand. This isn't random, he muttered. Something had changed. Vampires never attacked like this. They hunted quietly. Carefully. But tonight, they walked openly under the endless night. Kael looked back at the sky again. Still no moon. Still no stars. And most terrifying of all, no sign of dawn. His blood felt cold in his veins as a terrible thought crossed his mind. This wasn't a long night. This was the end of morning. And somewhere in the darkness, someone had just declared war on the sun. Kael stepped toward the edge of the rooftop, eyes glowing faintly in the black sky. All right, he whispered. Let's see who's brave enough to steal the sunrise. Then he jumped into the chaos below. Kael landed in a narrow alley as the sounds of chaos echoed through Noctera. A vampire rushed him from the darkness. Kael moved fast. One clean strike of his silver blade and the creature collapsed into dust. But another stepped forward. Then another. Too many. They were not hunting randomly. They were spreading through the city, like soldiers following orders. Kael kicked open a metal door and slipped inside an abandoned subway station. The underground tunnels were quiet, but the air felt heavy with something ancient. Waiting for him at the end of the platform was a woman in a long white coat. Arya Vale. Her eyes glowed faintly with pale blue light, as she studied the dark sky, through a broken ceiling above. You felt it too, she said calmly. Kael nodded. The sun didn't just set. It was sealed away. Arya raised an old book covered in strange symbols. Dark energy flickered across its pages. This wasn't a natural event, she continued. Someone used forbidden magic to block the sun itself. Kael frowned. Who? Arya closed the book slowly. A vampire order older than most kingdoms. The Crimson Circle. Kael had heard the name before. A secret network of vampires hidden across the world. But why now, he asked. Arya looked back toward the dark sky. Because tonight, she said quietly, they're not hiding anymore. They're starting a war. And if we don't stop them, her voice lowered, the sun may never rise again. The subway tunnels beneath Noctera stretched for miles, dark and silent except for the echo of distant footsteps. Kael and Arya moved quickly through the abandoned tracks, their shadows sliding across the cracked walls. Above them, the city was falling into chaos. But down here something worse was waiting. Arya held the ancient book close to her chest. Strange symbols glowed faintly across its cover. This book belonged to the first vampire hunters, she said. It describes the rituals of the Crimson Circle. Kael glanced at her. And it tells us how to stop them. Arya shook her head slightly. Not exactly. But it tells us where the ritual begins. She stopped beside a rusted station map and pointed at a location far beyond the city center. Blackspire Cathedral. Kael frowned. That place burned down decades ago. Not the foundations, Arya replied. The oldest part is still there. Built long before this city even existed. Kael understood immediately. Ancient ground. Ancient magic. Perfect for something dark. A deep rumble suddenly echoed through the tunnels. The lights flickered once before dying completely. For a moment everything went silent. Then dozens of red eyes slowly appeared in the darkness ahead. Vampires. They stepped out from the shadows one by one, blocking the tunnel like a living wall. Kael slowly drew his blade. Looks like they know where we're going. Arya opened the book, blue light beginning to glow from its pages. Then we don't stop. The first vampire lunged forward. Kael moved. The journey to stop the eternal night had officially begun. The ruins of Blackspire Cathedral rose like a broken crown at the edge of Noctera. What remained above ground was nothing more than shattered stone and collapsed towers. But beneath the ruins, the true cathedral still lived. Ancient. Silent. Waiting. Kael and Arya descended a spiral staircase hidden beneath the altar. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. Strange symbols were carved into the walls, glowing faintly with dark red light. Arya stopped suddenly. This place is older than the city, she whispered. Kael nodded. Older than the country. At the bottom of the stairs, a massive underground chamber opened before them. Hundreds of vampires stood in a wide circle around a glowing ritual platform. At the center of it all stood a tall figure wearing a black crown, King Vladran. But Kael quickly noticed something strange. Vladran wasn't leading the ritual. He was kneeling. A cold voice echoed through the chamber. You finally arrived. The shadows behind the ritual platform began to move. A shape slowly formed from the darkness itself. Tall, Ancient. Inhuman. Arya's face went pale. No. She breathed. Cale felt something burning inside his blood. The figure stepped forward, its eyes glowing with endless age. I have waited centuries for this moment. Arya looked at Cale with sudden horror. That's not Vladrin's ritual. That thing, she whispered, is Lord Varian. The first vampire. Varian's gaze locked onto Cale like a predator finding its prey. And you, the ancient voice said calmly, are the perfect vessel for my return. The chamber exploded into movement. Vampires rushed forward from every direction, sealing every exit of the underground cathedral. The Crimson Circle had been waiting for this moment. Cale raised his blade, but the ground beneath him suddenly cracked with dark energy. Chains of shadow burst from the ritual platform and wrapped around his arms and legs. The silver blade slipped from his hand and clattered across the stone floor. Cale struggled, but the chains tightened. Varian stepped forward slowly, his presence filling the entire chamber with a cold, ancient power. For thousands of years, the first vampire said calmly, my children have grown weaker. His glowing eyes studied Cale. But you are something new. Cale gritted his teeth. Get out of my head. Varian smiled. You carry the perfect blood. The strength of vampires. Without their weakness. Behind Cale, Arya raised both hands and unleashed a blast of radiant energy. Blue light surged across the chamber, knocking several vampires back. Run, Cale, she shouted. But more vampires swarmed around her, forcing her back. Varian raised a single hand. The ritual platform ignited with deep crimson light. This body will become the future of vampirism, he declared. The chains pulled Cale onto the center of the ritual circle. Symbols began burning into the stone beneath him. Arya fought desperately through the crowd, but she was too far away. The ritual had already begun. Dark energy poured into Cale's body like a storm. His vision blurred. And Varian's ancient voice whispered inside his mind. Your world ends tonight. Dark energy flooded the chamber like a rising tide. Cale's body was lifted into the air above the ritual platform, suspended in a storm of crimson light. The symbols carved into the stone floor burned brighter with every second. Varian's spirit moved like living shadow around him. Thousands of years of hunger, power, rage, all of it pushing into Cale's mind. You feel it, don't you? Varian's voice echoed inside his thoughts. The strength in your blood. The future of our kind. Cale tried to fight back, but his muscles wouldn't respond. The shadow chains tightened as if they were feeding on his resistance. Across the chamber, Arya was forced to her knees. A wall of vampires surrounded her. The glowing book had fallen from her hands, sliding across the cold stone floor. She reached for it, but one of the vampires kicked it away. Above them, the ritual reached its final stage. Outside the cathedral, the sky turned completely black. The last traces of twilight vanished. No stars. No moon. Only endless darkness. Throughout the city, vampires stepped freely into the open streets. Cars sat abandoned. Buildings were silent. Humanity had nowhere left to run. Back inside the chamber, Varian's spirit began merging with Cale's body. His glowing eyes slowly opened. For a brief moment, Cale's voice whispered weakly into the darkness. Arya, I'm losing it. Then the crimson light flared violently. Varian's laughter filled the cathedral. The age of eternal night begins now. Inside the storm of crimson energy, Cale's body hung motionless above the ritual circle. But deep inside his mind, something refused to break. Varian's ancient voice echoed like thunder. You cannot resist me. Your body belongs to me now. Darkness spread through Cale's thoughts, trying to erase him. Memories faded. The city, the fight, even his own name. But one thing remained. The fire in his blood. Cale's eyes snapped open. You picked the wrong host, he growled. A sudden pulse of silver light exploded from his chest. The shadow chains cracked as Cale forced his arms outward. Varian's spirit recoiled in shock. That blood. The ancient vampire hissed. It rejects you. Across the chamber, Arya saw the moment she had been waiting for. She crawled across the floor and grabbed the fallen book. The pages burst open, glowing brighter than before. This is our only chance, she whispered. Arya began chanting the forbidden spell. Symbols of radiant light rose into the air above the cathedral, spinning like burning stars. The ancient spell was dangerous. It wasn't meant to destroy one vampire. It was meant to destroy all of them. Vampires across the chamber suddenly froze in fear. What is she doing? One of them whispered. Cale clenched his fists as Varian struggled inside his body. End this, Cale shouted. Arya raised both hands. The spell ignited. Light exploded across the cathedral as the final battle for the night began. Light and darkness collided in the heart of Blackspire Cathedral. Arya's spell roared through the chamber like a rising sun. Rings of radiant symbols spun above the ritual platform, flooding the underground ruins with blinding light. Vampires across the cathedral staggered backward, shielding their eyes. This is impossible, one of them shouted. But the spell was already alive. At the center of the storm, Cale struggled as Varian fought to keep control of his body. You would destroy your own kind, the ancient vampire growled inside his mind. Kale clenched his fists, forcing the shadow chains apart. I'm saving the world. With one final surge of strength, Kale drove his fist into the glowing ritual core beneath him. The platform shattered. A massive wave of energy burst outward, ripping through the chamber. Varian's spirit screamed as the ancient presence was torn from Kale's body and consumed by the collapsing ritual. For a moment everything went silent. Then the darkness above the cathedral cracked. Far away in the sky, the first rays of sunlight broke through the black clouds. Across Noctara, the night finally began to retreat. Kale collapsed onto the stone floor as Arya ran to his side. It's over, she whispered. But Kale slowly looked up at the rising sun outside the ruins. Something felt different. Vampires in the distance were still standing, even under the daylight. The world had been saved. But the rules of the night had just changed forever. And somewhere in the shadows, new powers were already beginning to rise. Comment 1 for the next part.